Welcome to Sovereignty in Action. I'm your host, Ian Record. I am honored to be joined today by Alex Yazza, who is the Executive Director of the Owens Valley Career Development Center, or OVC-DC, which is headquartered in Bishop, California. OVC-DC is a tribal consortium organization that provides opportunities for education, wellness, self-sufficiency, and employment to Native Americans and tribal communities while protecting, preserving, and promoting tribal cultures and traditions. A citizen of the Navajo Nation, he served as the first department director for Navajo's TANF program and also worked as community manager for public safety for the Gila River Indian community. Welcome, Alex, and good to have you with us today.
Good day, Ian. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So before we dive into our topics of discussion, I shared a little bit about who you are, but why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit more about yourself? What did I leave out?
Well, in my language, we say Yate, good to see you. And no, I think you did a tremendous job in given my resume as a member of the Navajo Nation. Very happy to be here in regards to speaking on behalf of workforce development for Indian country. Having that experience, I'm dating myself probably for the last 20 some odd years in this field of work. But no, I think you covered everything. Pretty much. Thank you.
So you mentioned you're a member of the Navajo Nation. Can you tell us a bit more about Navajo for those who may not know much about it? A little bit about the land, the culture, the people.
Well, Navajo Nation is God's country. In our language, we call the Nebekea, or the Navajo land. We're a land in size of about 27,000 square miles. Our population base is about 170,000 plus. We are in the southwestern region of the United States, in the states of Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. The people there are very proud people, hardworking people. Quite frankly, also the home of the Navajo Code Talkers, the famous Code Talkers. And quite frankly, I'm also a grandson of a Code Talker. My grandfather, Vincent Yazza, served proudly as a Navajo Nation Code Talker. So, yeah, good people.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We're here today to discuss the topic of tribal workforce development, as you mentioned, and how tribal nations and Native organizations are working strategically and innovatively to build the capacity of Native people to live productive lives and contribute to community life and the advancement of their nation's long-term priorities. And I'd like to start with the challenges that you know well, that you see every day, that you work with and work around every day, and how tribal nations and Native organizations are working to overcome them. So from your perspective, what do you see as some of the most common and difficult workforce development challenges facing tribes?
No, that's an excellent question. I think that in general, Native communities have always been on the fighting side of development in terms of workforce development. I want to just kind of go back to some of the issues that we have. First of all, the high unemployment rate is really stark in terms of the percentages. I know there's, from the Navajo Nation's perspective, at least where I came from, it was anywhere between 42 to 45% high unemployment rate. I think there's areas in Indian country that I've heard it goes as high as 70%. So I think that's one thing that really sticks out in terms of the issues of workforce and not having enough jobs available. In addition to that, I think some of the challenges we also face is the lack of jobs, the lack of infrastructure. And along with that are individual job skills, education levels, and more importantly, it's just the fact that having enough jobs to go around in tribal communities. And I think that's always been the issue in Indian country. However, of late, I think in the last 20 some odd years with the advent of tribal gaming, there's been at least opportunities provided by those tribes that have established casinos and any subsidiary type business that's been developed out of that has helped create some of those job opportunities. But in most cases, tribes that are non-gaming are still experiencing a lot of the disparities and the barriers that I think in general that we face in regards to properly training the people for the types of skills and then employing them. So I think those are the challenges that I see still existing in the country today.
So, thinking about those challenges, I mean, you worked for your own nation, then you worked for Gila River. Now you're working for an organization that serves and represents a number of tribes in your part of California. How are you seeing those nations, other nations, working to overcome some of these challenges? What are you seeing that's working? Where are they finding success?
One of the tribes that I worked for was a gaming tribe. Let me just start with that. One thing that I've seen there as part of my experience working there for a good 6-7 years is that the opportunities that were created, and again, a lot of this was espoused off of their gaming operations and the revenues that they've been able to generate, which then converted into, I think, a smart way of diversifying their funds. And part of that whole diversification in terms of creating job opportunities for their people, creating a better living environment, building up the infrastructure in the communities, and more importantly, just really attaining to those social needs that people have with regards to either alcoholism, drug abuse, or any other type of health issues to really bring them up to standards, if you may. And I've seen that as an example of what this particular tribe has done as a way of then really bolstering their economies, and more importantly, to really be able to generate the kind of jobs that were needed for their population. So that's one example that I saw, and being a part of that is a good illustration of what a particular tribe or a program can do with proper planning, with a very strong strategic direction, with strategic planning, and then being able to then fall and continue to provide the services that are needed to the people. On the flip side of that, the current organization that I work for, the Owens Valley Career Development Center, we're such a large organization. We're in 6 counties in Central California. There is a difference in terms of the scales of economies, if you may, of what exists on the eastern side of the Sierras and what exists on the western side of the Sierras. And so there's some mix of economies that exist that tribes on the east side are challenged with versus tribes on the west side that have more opportunities in business development, community development, and things as such. So those are just some instances that I see that tribes are experiencing and facing those challenges, but also at the same time being able to develop those opportunities that exist from within. So those are just a couple of things I just wanted to mention here.
So as you mentioned earlier, and you said you were dating yourself, you've been involved in this arena for quite a long time. And I'm curious, if you think back to where the landscape was around tribal workforce development when you started in this field and where it is now, how have you seen it evolve?
Well, as a young person living on the Navajo Nation, I remember back in the 70s, there was this program called the Comprehensive Employment Training Act, I think it was, the old CETA program, and it's funded under the Department of Labor. And I had a chance to participate that as a young person. I remember kind of a small story here about myself. I remember a couple of summers that being a part of the youth program under CETA, had a chance to obtain a job through the public sector of that program, and worked with a coal mine that was located east of Winter Rock, Arizona. And the opportunity that I had with that was that I was able to work in their surveying section. And I don't know if you know what a surveyor chain man is, but I was the guy that carried the rod and the guy that was looking through the theodolit, zooming in on the distance and then being able to actually provide that service. And that was a fun job. And what I learned from that as a youth was not only in terms of the responsibilities, but also actually working in an environment of engineers and surveyors. And what we did a lot during that summer was we did a lot of surveying of mine pits. And this was an open pit mining operation. So what we did is we went around and surveyed the mine pits that were blasted. And at the same time, we also did some surveying on the actual boundaries of the mine, and also did some road construction surveying. So that all in a couple of summers really provided me with the kind of experience and kind of an outlook of what opportunities there may be for myself and looking forward. So that's an example. I remember back in the 80s when the JTPA program existed, and then that then transformed into the Workforce Investment Act, and then now it's the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. So I think during the time frames probably in the last 30, 40 years of progression, that through the federally subsidized programs of providing funding for job training and employment opportunities, you know, I've seen that transform into what it is today, and it still continues today. And I think what that does is several things. One is that for whether you're an adult or a young person, it really gives you an opportunity to you know, not only engage in the kind of work that are available out there, but also to learn from that, to give you the experience and say, okay, here's a job that, you know, I might be interested in doing, but in order to attain the kind of position that you want or job you want, then it leads into education, leads into the types of training that's required for those types of jobs. So I see that as a very beneficial in terms of maybe the tribe thinking in the ways of investing itself into then creating a workforce for their communities and their environment, so that people can be able to engage in that. In today's world, the workforce, the WIOA program is very key and crucial. I know that the youth programs are very pretty much the same, as well as providing services for the adult population. So I know that through time in history, that tribes have been exposed to those kind of federally subsidized programs, have always been a must, in addition to other economic opportunities that have been there that tribes have engaged in. So those are just some of the experiences that I had.
So let's turn now to Owens Valley Career Development Center. Why was that organization established? What's its mission? Who does it serve? And how has its work evolved since its founding?
The Owens Valley Career Development Center was established in 1976. So this year we're celebrating our 40th year of our anniversary. And it was really, at the time, established to create an opportunity for the tribes in the state of California, particularly there in the county that we operate, in Inyo County, where the Paiute tribal communities reside. And really kind of back up, it was predicated by a governing board called the Owens Valley Board of Trustees, which is represented by the communities of Bishop Paiute, the Big Pine Paiute community, as well as the Lone Pine Paiute Shoshone community. Between the three tribes, there's a governing board of 5 representatives from Bishop, 1 from Lone Pine, 1 from Bishop, which oversaw basically the development for them was to oversee land assignments for those particular communities. But of course, over time, it became very apparent that because of their economic conditions there in the Owens Valley, that it was needed to create an opportunity for their tribal communities to develop a training program, vocational training program, education services, and more importantly, in the arena of job creation. And that's really the basis of what the organization was built on. And then since that time, of course, they were able to demonstrate by way of, again, seeking and receiving federal subsidies, and they were able to also bring in educational funding both from the state of California as well as from the federal government, and provided those types of services so that at one point in time they were a school that existed there on campus in Bishop that provided vocational education and training. So we have people coming in, obtaining certifications for carpentry, for example, plumbing certifications and electrical certifications. So we did have a success in providing that type of training for a lot of tribal community members. Back in early 2000, the leadership at that time, management at that time, saw the opportunity with the Tribal Tanner program to add those services into their organization. So hence, they applied for the Tribal Tanner program and received it. And then since that time to today, they've been providing Tribal Tanner services in terms of cash aid and prevention services as we provide today. So it's got a long history in that sense, but it's always been geared towards economic development, community development, and then more the basis of the employment as well as the job training aspects of providing services. So that's how the Owens Valley Career Development Center was established.
So drilling down a little bit on that, you mentioned that the center serves multiple tribal nations and communities there in the region. Can you shed a bit more light about how the center supports the workforce development priorities of the nations that it serves?
Sure. Let me just briefly describe just geographically where we're located. The Owens Valley is, we're headquartered in Bishop, California, and we actually operate in 6 counties in Central California: Mono County, Inyo County, Kern County, Tulare County, Kings County, as well as Fresno County. And currently we have 15 office sites in each of those 6 counties, or in all the 6 counties. And we provide services to the Native families that reside in those 6 counties. More importantly is that the organization is comprised of a consortia of tribes. So we represent 12 tribal nations or tribes or rancherias. And so we provide services to those particular tribes as well as rancheria and the communities that we serve. So it's a fairly large organization. Owens Valley consists of about 210 employees. We provide services to about 700 families a month, all across the 6 county areas. But also in terms of providing services, we also have a relationship with the tribal administrations and the tribal councils. So my job as an executive director is very, I have a full capacity here of not only providing services to the clientele that we serve and the people that we serve, but also servicing the needs of the tribal communities. And in addition to that, providing services and networking and collaborating with the county offices, the municipalities that we operate with, in partnership with them, and then other service providers throughout the 6 counties. So it's a fairly large operation. Funding-wise, we receive about $30 million a year federal subsidies, and so that provides a great portion of our operation and administrative costs to the people that we serve throughout the area.
So you mentioned that you work with tribal councils and tribal governments. Is there an exchange of info where they're saying to you, here's what our community needs in order to improve the quality of life, here's what kind of skills we need in the community, here's the kinds of jobs that we have available, and then it's your charge to figure out how do we match that need with our programming, make sure our programming reflects those needs, and that we're preparing individuals from those communities and those tribes to actually meet those needs. Is that part of the process?
Exactly. I think what's important here is demonstrating that as a single organization, that meeting the needs of the communities is important. So a lot of communication, a lot of collaboration. In the last couple of years that I've been with the organization, we've had the opportunity to actually go out, visit with each of the tribes, and just recently when we are in engagement of renewing our tribal TANF plan for the next 3 years, we've actually conducted meetings with the tribal councils and also with the community at large, and we've done some public hearings as an example of doing that. And so on the public hearings, really it was twofold. One was to get ideas from the community in terms of the services that we provide. You know, how are we doing with that in respect to meeting your needs and providing services to your families? So we got a lot of feedback on that. The second part of that was to the actual clients themselves, and we were able to actually engage with them, seeing what their needs were in terms of other types of services that we could provide that could be beneficial to themselves as well as to their families. So all in all, I think it's been important for us that not only do we collaborate, cooperate and coordinate with the communities, but more importantly is to go in there and to assess those type of needs, that then we can come back and say, okay, here are some things that we need to address, whether it's an area of education, whether it's an area of social services, or in the area of our cash aid and preventive services that we provide. So in the platform of services that we provide, for example, aside from the TANF program, we also provide a family literacy program, language and culture program, a career ed program, and also just recently we added the early Head Start program that provides early childhood education services to the families in each of those county areas that I described. So yeah, it's a total collaborative effort, and it makes my job a lot easier for me to go out there to understand what those needs are. Then we translate that into what we provide as part of our planning process, and then moving forward to seek as well as other opportunities that the people and the communities have been requesting for.
So it sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like as Owens Valley's work over the 40 years has evolved, it's really keyed in through ongoing communication, consultation with not just clientele, but with the tribal communities that it serves, tribal nations that it works with. That its approach to workforce development has gotten more holistic, more comprehensive, more customized to what the distinct local needs are versus what perhaps the boilerplate, overview of what a federal program might look like, just out of the gate. That you guys have really figured out, in order to be comprehensive, in order to really get at some of the root issues that are holding some of our clients back, we've got to be comprehensive. We've got to be able to put ourselves in a position to customize this to local needs. Is that a fair assessment? And if so, can you shed a little bit more light on that? How that's unfolded?
No, it's a good description, I think, overall. Let me just further go beyond that. I think as not only we work at the tribal end of it, seeing and identifying the local community needs, but our task also is we work with the state of California, for example, through the funding mechanisms that we receive. We receive California State Maintenance of Effort funds in addition to the federal TANF funds. So we receive a match funding requirement from the state. So it's imperative on us also to have that relationship with the state of California Department of Social Services and communicating with their administrators and their supervisors, and being able to, again, collaborate on the needs of the tribal communities that we serve. Above that, of course, is the federal agencies that we work with, in this case, the Department of Health and Human Services here, through ACF and OFA, and being able to address those matters regarding the Tribal TANF program, the child care program, and now the Early Head Start program. So again, there's a lot of discussion that happens with regards to meeting the needs of the tribal communities and servicing the families that we serve and represent. So the give and take, if you may, is almost at all levels, at the federal level, state level, then at the tribal level. And at the tribal level, what's important for us is that we do have periodic meetings on a quarterly basis. We have what we call a tribal work group meeting that in every tribal location we're meeting with tribal chairwomen or chairpersons, council members, and then any of the service providers that are in those immediate areas, and really just have a conversation, a discussion on the services that we're providing, any updates that we provide, but more importantly, also listening for issues that we need to resolve in regards to maybe not meeting particular needs or being able to upgrade certain aspects of our program. So that's even helpful for us. And then there's also one more avenue of communication that we have is what they call the TANF Advisory Committee, which also meets at least twice a year. And that committee really is comprised of the tribal leadership. So we have representative actual chairpersons or council members that sit on that advisory committee. And what we do there is, again, have the discussions of our organization. And vis-a-vis, they also provide a lot of feedback to us in terms of how we could better services, how we could be able to better collaborate and provide additional programs for them at their respective communities. So those are the kind of levels of communication that we are engaged in, and it's very helpful for us. And I think it gives us at least the exposure to what the real needs are, so that we can be able to better prepare, plan for, and seek the kind of resources that are necessary then to build upon our organizational programs and services that we provide.
And has this not then taken the form of what you guys have called your strategic framework? Does this not inform that the development and maintenance of that strategic framework? I do want to talk a little bit more about this. I remember you graciously agreed to sit on a panel about workforce development at our last conference, our last annual convention, and you shared about the Owens Valley Career Development Center strategic framework. Can you paint a brief picture of what that framework involves? Why did Owens Valley craft this framework? How does it work in practice?
Sure. I've been with Owens Valley now going on 4 years, and I've been out of the tribal TANF arena probably for close to 7 years before I came back. And one of the first interests that I had when I came back to the program was exactly where we were in the tribal program of TANF. Again, TANF is predicated on 4 purposes, providing the needs of services to families. One of the purposes there was purpose 2, which talks about job preparation for families. And my interest strongly was in that area. So again, I asked my staff and I asked my board, where exactly are we at with job preparation activities? And so when they provided the data, the information to me, I was kind of not somewhat taken back, but I just kind of felt that there's more that needed to be done. And the reason why I say that is because, again, we're predicated by the requirements of the law. 45 CFR 286 is the tribal TANF regs. And in that, there's provisions that really provides for us to meet the mandatory work participation rates of our clients. For Owens Valley, we set that at 30%. So we were saying to the federal agency that at any given time during the fiscal year, that we'll have 30% of our TANF clientele into a work activity service program. So when we see that kind of percentage and the performance factor that we have to meet, then it's incumbent on us to say, okay, how are we then meeting those needs? So we had to take a step back and we had to take a look at the environment that we were looking at. So I took the strategic approach considering the provisions of the law, one, but also looking at the economies of scale of the service areas that we provided geographically. So in Central California, for example, we looked at the labor force statistics, we looked at the market itself, the economic reports from the state of California, the county economic profiles, and then more importantly were the tribal economies and their economic profiles that they provided. So collectively, we had enough information to say, okay, what kind of jobs are we looking at? You know, what kind of opportunities are we looking at for our clientele? So then we created these strands of types of jobs. So for example, when I say strands, it could be the hospitality industry, it could be the computer industry, it could be the tourism industry, whatever the case is. So what we have in the counties that we serve are particular industries that we've identified and say, okay, what are the top 5 jobs in each of those county areas that then we need to prepare our clientele to be gainfully employed. So hence we then create this, what is called the Economic Development Initiative Strategic Framework. I know it's a mouthful, but the staff coined that as now the EDI plan, the EDI plan, the EDI plan. So anytime that we refer to that plan, it's always referenced as the EDI plan. So now that we have the EDI plan in place, it's been 2 years. And so what that really comprised of was to, again, allow us as an organization to have a plan in place that, one, internally, that our staff could be able to use and to be able to address the 6 goals that were developed, to look at the objectives that we had to establish in terms of meeting those goals, but more importantly is then enacting and being able to task those responsibilities out. So that was one aspect. The other aspect really was, at my level for myself, is then to take that plan, be able to go out and do more of the community outreach. Part of the outreach process is that meeting with the business leaders, meeting with the business communities, meeting with the educational institutions, and so on and so forth. So the list goes on and on. So it really gives us an added advantage and, more importantly, an added value for us, so that we're able to use that document as the mainstay of then what we need to do moving forward. So we've been at it now a couple of years, and we're looking at the data that we've been compiled from it, and we're beginning more clearly to understand what it is that our jobs are, what it is that we still need to do, and so on and so forth. So it became a strong focal point of our organization, and when we provided this information back to the board of directors that I report to, or the board of trustees, they were very much enthused about it and felt that it was right timing, that we needed to engage that kind of planning process. So looking forward, that also really gave us a strong strategic direction for the organization.
It's interesting the details you painted around this. Does it not give you a lens through which to make decisions on a daily basis? When you have that strategic framework in place, you can figure out, okay, is what's before us today advancing that framework? And then on the flip side, once you've done that work, as you're on an ongoing basis, of course, but once you've done that work, it's a way to measure progress, is it not? Mm-hmm. And figuring out what can we do better, how do we need to retool this, refine this, add a new piece, mm-hmm. change how we're doing this program or that program. Having that sort of overarching sense of where we're going and why, how important is that? Because I know this is what plagues a lot of tribes when it comes to workforce development, because they've been operating in these silos that are created by these federal programs, and that strategic piece is not part of the equation.
Right. And thank you for saying that, because it is. And what I do see at times is that we do work in silos. That was one of the immediate identifiers that I saw, even within our organization, is that you have program A, B, and C, but each and every program is doing a little different and separate things, and they're not working together. So what we're having to do with that then is breaking down those silos and say, okay, TANF, here's the Career Education Center. You guys need to be working together by way of employment coordination, by way of providing data in terms of what the client's needs are, and translate that to the career ed people so that they can help to provide educational services and training job opportunities for those clients in this program. And it's all under the umbrella of one program, but yet we were doing things separately in silos. So what this plan did is that it brought together the key leadership, the management team, and say, okay, you know, career education director, you're going to be a part of this. The TANF director, you're going to be part of this. So every aspect of the program, we've had to bring their management team in and basically just really paint a picture for them, the bigger picture, the broader picture, to say that this is what we need to achieve. We need to be able to achieve some results out of the services that we provide, predicated based on the requirements that we have to meet on the federal side of things, but more importantly, what is it that we need to be able to do to be innovative, to be inventive enough to say, how do we meet those demands and those needs for the people? And more importantly, I think what that did for us is that it began to then hone in on a lot of things that they were doing. You know, there's a lot of programming that was established, services that were established, that were doing the right things, but they weren't collaborating, and they weren't talking, and they weren't communicating. So what this plan does now, it allows everybody to communicate, to collaborate, and to be able to form those internal partnerships, if you may, and to integrate the services that are really the focal point of what we should be doing rightfully for the results that we need for the clients. The other aspect of this was really establishing stronger performance measures and performance standards. So we created a data measurement portion of that planning process, and that's what we're looking at now. We're reviewing that to see how successful we are in meeting those needs of the services for the people, and be able to measure, engage, and say, you know, are we establishing a true success story for the clients and even for ourselves, to say that we are accomplishing the goals and the objectives that we set out using the strategic plan that we created and moving things forward. So it helped us to attain that. There were some give and takes, if you may. I think the managers now feel very responsible for what they've created, and they are more accountable to what it is that they have to do now. And now they're following through. Beforehand, I don't think there was a real strong sense of doing that, but now that they have this planning document in place, they understand the value of the planning process moving forward. So really, that's all it is creating this strategic direction. I say strategic direction a lot, and only because it's really what it's all about, is you want to be able to assess, review, and be able to demonstrate, you know, those needs, and then put that into a planning process, and then move it forward, and then that sets the direction for your organization going forward. So it's a holistic part of a strategic planning process in regards to how then people are able to use that. And just the last thing I want to comment on that is that, much to my surprise, in introducing that concept and that idea of thinking, is that people are more action plan oriented now. And that's the beauty of that now, because program managers that weren't using internal action plans are now doing a lot of action plans with their staff. And that's great to see, because you know, a couple of programs in the organization, the Family Literacy Program, for example, used that process just within the last year, and they were able to kind of revamp a lot of their services. They were able to address and develop more stronger goals and objectives for themselves, and create a stronger performance standard for themselves, and now they're measuring themselves against that. So I saw that as a value, and it was a really, I felt very appreciative of that, because I think now they're understanding that that's really what's needed going forward.
So one key aspect of this, and I remember when we were at our annual convention and you were sharing about this framework, you had a really interesting visual graphic up on the screen about what the framework looks like. And what was really intriguing to me was how, and you touched on this, but how it marries job creation with economic development. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how it does it. How does it marry job creation with economic development? Because a lot of workforce development is solely focused on how do we prepare
Right.
our people to be employable, and not so much on how are we working to figure out what the opportunities are and how we might create more opportunities.
Well, what we did essentially was, again, looking at the requisites or the requirements of the TANF law, and then picking up those provisions of what we needed to address, and then just expanding that further. The expansion of that really is, I guess one of the key things was looking at the environment that we were working in. Most of the communities at Owens Valley, for example, are small tribal communities. Tribes that I work with are not large land-based, so they're very small in terms of the amount of land that they have. The history of California in treatment of tribes has really been horrendous, and it's a very sad history in a sense. And a lot of people that are now living in the rancherias and the tribal communities, they have a lot of stories that they've shared in regards to the way that they were treated and the way their reservations were created. So what I understood there is that, okay, what are the economies of scales, for example? Again, I go back to that notion, is what is the environment looking like? What's the opportunity? So it simply was a matter of just going back and again, looking at those labor markets, looking at those labor force data and statistics, and then primarily, what were the tribes doing? What are the tribes providing as their basis of economic development? And some tribes are lucky that they may have game and resources that they can be able to revenue, or at least provide services, create services and opportunities for their people. But there's also other tribes that aren't gaming tribes and are struggling financially. So in those cases, we have to understand that when we inject the kind of services and programs that may be subsidized federally, then it's very beneficial for them because it's creating those opportunities for them. So there was a whole, I guess, the viewpoint was to really get a sense of what was happening or what is happening. And then from that, get a sense of what the economies were, and being able then to say, okay, in order for us to create the kind of work opportunities and job opportunities, these are things that we need to address. And right now, at the top of my list is really improving the educational attainment of our clientele. So part of the focal point of this strategic initiative is part of the job preparation that we have to be a part of, is to provide educational services. So we looked at the spectrum of the adult population all the way back to the youth. So for the youth, for example, we're coming up with this development called the career pathways notion, and which, by the way, I want to thank the folks from the Coachella Valley Economic Commission. I was in Denver attending an ACF tribal meeting about 2 years ago, and there's a couple of ladies there that were talking about career pathways. And I remember sitting there in her work, in one of the workshops, and it dawned on me there is that, wow, that's the answer that I'm looking for to then inspire the young people in these particular families that we work with, is how do we generate an opportunity from the young people, whether they're still in grade school, mid-school, through high school, but beyond, after they finish high school, what are their endeavors, what their plans would be of either continuing their education or getting into a job. Part of that idea is, again, how you break the cycle of then ending the welfare system. Because really, when we talk about the welfare system of tribal communities, you want to be able to break the cycle of, rather than to repeat yourself, to say, well, I want to be like mom and dad and be on the welfare program or the TANF program. And we want to divert that idea away from the young people and say, here's a career track that you need to start looking at, even at a very young age, and be able to build that through a spectrum to a point at a time when they are young adults, that they have an idea of what they want to provide for themselves in terms of education, but also the kind of jobs that they want. So we built that career pathway track in the youth empowerment portion of the EDI plan that we have. The other aspect of it was on the current adult population. You know, we have a high population of people that haven't completed their high school diplomas. So the adult basic ed program, the GED programs are very helpful for them to, again, begin that track. And then being able to then work with other institutions, education institutions that may be able to work with our people to further attain their education requirements. So that's a whole basis of how this started and how the job creation and employment opportunities development really was the premise of what we then created this EDI plan as the basis of that.
So we have a little bit of time left. I wanted to talk about some of the key components of the EDI plan. You just mentioned youth empowerment. Can you talk a little bit more about what that particular component of the EDI plan entails?
One of the requirements is that, well, one of the goals that we've created, of course, for the young people, again, being that this is a very specific tribal organization, is really having an awareness of their culture, their language, but more importantly is to have an awareness of where they are in terms of their environment. And I think that's important because, again, as you grow up in a tribal community, whether you're there in an urbanized area or in a rural area, you have to understand that you're going to be a resident of that community for your lifetime. So what's available for them and what's important for them is the understanding of what's opportunities that we have and the potential of opportunities that could be created. So part of the youth empowerment program is that is really teaching the young people to become very attentive to, one, their education, because education is important. I heard a comment here, somebody had said that education is economic development. And I think that's important, because the more we educate ourselves as Native people, the more I think we can be able to create opportunities economically and to sustain those economic opportunities. And I think developing a youth development, youth empowerment, youth track is really predicated to that, is start at a young age and be able to demonstrate to them and show them, in some cases, I think part of our plan is that we want to be able to showcase, or at least give tours of the type of industries that are out there, the kind of programs that are available, in terms of furthering their education, and really embed in their mind by the time they get to high school that they have an idea that, hey, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, or whatever the case is. But the whole idea is to incense in them that here's what we are talking about in terms of really solidifying your education, building that platform so that when you become a young adult, you have a choice and you have your mind made up as to what track that you want to go, what career that you want to go into. If we do that job very positively and very correctly, then I think we have more of our people, young people, becoming more educated. When I was a young person, for example, I was always taught by my parents and my grandparents to educate yourself. And I'm proud to say that I've got my master's degree from the University of Arizona.
Go Wildcats.
And so, I listened to that advice And so that's always been, my forte is that helping out the young people and empowering them so that they can understand that, they're not, a TANF recipient in 5-10 years from now, but they can be a productive individual, for themselves, but more or less for their communities, and come back as leaders in their communities so they can further educate and further develop and further grow their tribal communities. So I think this is really what it's all about as part of our youth empowerment in the EDI plan that we developed.
So we have time to touch on one other component of the EDI plan, and that is data measurement. You touched on this already, but if you can go in a little bit more detail about the importance of data, the role of data, how has the organization's ability to generate, measure, analyze data been enhanced by this process? And then how are you using that to strengthen your decision making?
Twofold, I guess. One, of course, is making certain that we're meeting the performance standards of the agency, the federal agency, in terms of meeting the mandatory work participation rate, for example, and giving us a threshold to say that, okay, we are meeting that as one of our primary goals. The second point to it, I think, is even more important, is collecting that data for ourselves, is to demonstrate how successful this plan can be, and then some. I think we're in the midst now, for example, of modifying even the EDI plan as we speak. And part of that modification is to demonstrate looking at the data to say, okay, are we successful, let me just say, for example, in the age group of 18 to 24-year-olds, as they're transitioning out of an adult basic ed program, for example, to becoming employed, and then how are we tracking them thereafter. So I think that's important for us to understand, because we want to be able to show not only those successes, but show to ourselves that as a program that we're meeting those milestones that we set out, we're meeting those goals and objectives that we set out, and that always can be improved, could be the next stepping stone to making those improvements. I think the other aspect of that too is there's not very much data out there for an organization like ours that captures the kind of data that we need, not only for the review, to research and to assess, but also to share with other programs as maybe a best practice, for example, but also maybe establishing a clearinghouse of sorts of tribal communities that are invested into a program like the Tribal TANF program, workforce development, or whatever the case is. But I think this is a good way to demonstrate that we're on that course to establish a database for ourselves, not only in terms of internal measurements, but also to be able to be sure that, and also, of course, is to use that information for other resources. The more we think about it is we want to diversify ourselves and being able to obtain other financial resources, and along with that, they're going to be requiring us to provide data for them. So I think in the aspects of that, that's what we're building up as, is a stronger data measurement on that.
And doesn't it ultimately empower you to assess, just on a very comprehensive foundational level, are the communities we serve getting healthier? Is the quality of life in those communities improving? Are the quality of life for those people that we're serving improving? I mean, just sort of big picture, is that not the ultimate benefit of being armed with that sort of data and the ability to analyze it on an ongoing basis?
Certainly. Again, as Native Americans here in Indian country today, again, we're always labeled as disadvantaged, population. And I hate to think that. I think our Native people have a lot to contribute, and given an opportunity, given the resources, we can do a lot. I think at times that we, catch ourselves in a situation where we're always, pushing against the grain, and rightfully so. And I think for Native Americans and organizations like Owens Valley Career Development Center, you know, we want to be able to be on that cutting edge and seeing what we can do to further grow our tribal communities, grow the economic opportunities, but more importantly, to be successful in ways that we are achieving, you know, the goals we are achieving for ourselves as a strong Native program, and that we can be successful and you know, run with the best of them. It's just using that Native know-how and that unique ingenuity that we have as Native persons.
Well, Alex, we really appreciate you taking some time to share your thoughts and wisdom and experience with us. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where Owens Valley and the Eddy plan is 5-10 years down the road, and seeing all the wonderful things that you guys will continue to do.
Sounds good, Ian. Thank you very much.